Coming to paperback and e-readers, John Haynes' Illuminati. The man who rules the world takes on the head of the global elite in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Pre-order your copy of John Haynes' Illuminati on Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Better get the coleslaw, y'all, because we're having us a barbecue. It looks like the remake of The Color Purple is a box office flop. Now, many mainstream media outlets want to say that The Color Purple had a strong opening on Christmas Day with an $18 million opening, which they claim to be the biggest opening for a film on Christmas Day. However, when I take a critical look at the box office numbers in proportion to the cost of the film, The Color Purple basically looks like it's got a long way before it goes into the black of profitability. Now, The Color Purple remake from 2023 cost $100 million to make, and with The Color Purple costing $100 million, its $18 million opening is basically sounding like the film flopped at the box office. Because I find it interesting that the film Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, which had an over $250 million budget, was considered to be a flop with a $40 million opening. However, The Color Purple, with a $100 million budget and an $18 million opening, is considered to be a hit. So when I look at the numbers, it's looking to me like the mainstream media is trying to gaslight people into believing that The Color Purple is a hit, and they want to try to use the same kind of spin that they tried to use when the Marvels flopped at the box office. Now, when the Marvels flopped at the box office, what they tried to do to spin the story was try to say that this was the biggest box office opening for a black female director to cover the failure of the movie to open in a way that it would lead to it being profitable. Now, The Color Purple remake at a $100 million cost and an $18 million opening would be considered to be a flop by Hollywood standards, and it would be considered to be a flop because such an anemic opening in proportion to the overall cost of the film would ensure that the film would not be able to pull a profit according to Hollywood's overall business model. Now, according to Hollywood's overall business model, a film is considered to be break even if it makes 3 times its production budget and advertising costs, and with The Color Purple remake, they would have to make $300 to $400 million to be considered break even, or to even be considered eking towards the road of profitability. But with an $18 million opening and a sales plummet as related to the next week, The Color Purple remake is not looking like the hit that Hollywood is trying to spin it to become. No, it's looking more and more like this movie has basically flopped at the box office and taken on a huge loss for Steven Spielberg and Oprah Winfrey, who were the producers of this remake of a film that nobody wanted. And it looks like most people weren't out here eager to go see The Color Purple, which is considered by many heterosexual black men to be an anti-black man film with misandrous narratives. Now, there are some who want to say that this film softened the narratives of misandry with the Mr. character, but the misandry elements are still there, and I believe that this was the thing that alienated people at the box office from seeing this film that was a remake of the 1985 film that basically did very well at the box office because there was a resurgence of interest in black films And a lot of people got bamboozled by people like Oprah Winfrey into believing that this narrative was the one that was the norm. However, over the last 30 years, as social media has emerged, there have been many black men, including myself, to speak against the narrative of the color purple and how this narrative is basically laid in a foundation of white supremacy, white feminism, black feminism, and anti black misandry. And this has basically led to this film not having the impact that Hollywood thought it would have on black audiences, because black audiences have basically vehemently rejected the narratives that Alice Walker presented in her novel, The Color Purple, and the adaptations that have come, whether it be the original adaptation that came out in 1985 or this musical adaptation. It's looking like audiences were not interested in hearing about these narratives of The Color Purple, because more and more people have become aware of the anti-black narratives and themes presented in this film that presents a story about Celie, a young woman who is allegedly abused by Mr. And a lot of these story details have basically been refuted as becoming historically inaccurate. So this film basically wound up not being able to gain any traction because more and more people in the black community have become informed by sources like New Black Media to see the negative messages that are presented regarding black men, the black family, and black love in this film. And that's what led to The Color Purple bombing at the box office, leaving a lot of the producers in the red as related to the anti-black film they were looking to present. Now, The Color Purple basically was a flop at the box office, and the mainstream media, what they want to do is try to gaslight you into believing that the film did well as related to its first day, but after that first day, this film wound up on a road where it would not be profitable, because this film, if you've got an $18 million opening and you have a major drop-off, that means that there's not going to be much profitability for The Color Purple, and it basically just puts the nail in the coffin for these kinds of films. However, that's not going to stop Hollywood, which clearly has an anti-black agenda with this type of material, and The Color Purples being a box office flop is something I could celebrate, because it's showing me the impact of New Black Media on a new generation and a rejection of these kinds of narratives that started and ushered in the gender wars between black men and black women, and created a divide between black men and black women, and the entire narrative of presenting black men as the face of sexual predation, when in actuality, if we were to look at the time period of The Color Purple, there was no way that a black man could have abused or oppressed Celie the way Alice Walker presented, because that black man himself was being oppressed by Jim Crow laws of white supremacy and being put in the same second-class position that she was. Moreover, that same black man was being abused as related to these Jim Crow laws, so he had no support from the legal system to oppress a black woman, nor did he have the influence or power to do so, and he did not have that power because he shared no power with white supremacy. That is the kind of detail that Alice Walker omitted from her novel, The Color Purple, in addition to omitting the whole point that when it came down to sexual deviancy, it was the slave master who was the main one who taught the slaves this type of deviancy, as he abused them, and he abused many of the slaves, both male and female, and the person who would be accountable for this type of cruelty is the white slave master. But Alice Walker omitted this because she wanted to demonize black men and wanted to promote an anti-black man narrative that was promoted all throughout the 1980s and made a rift between black men and black women that started the gender wars on places like social media. So this film, The Color Purple, is finally getting the pushback from black audiences who, as I see it, with an $18 million opening, rejected this film because those same black audiences, again, they went out in large numbers to see Black Panther and made that film basically open with a $250 million opening over the course of February, one of the slowest months of the year. But none of those folks came out to go see The Color Purple. And this film actually even did worse than Tyler Perry movies in the same time slot. So that basically shows me that this film is a flop, and I'm grateful to see that it is a flop because it's showing me that a lot more black people's eyes are opening as related to these kinds of anti-black narratives, and we're rejecting these narratives at the box office and voting with our dollars and demanding better images of ourselves. Because we can definitely do better than The Color Purple if we're in an era where we're getting black fantasy films like Black Panther and showing that there is an audience for other genres of film like black fantasy. We're saying that we want better quality films, and I'm happy to see people wanting and demanding better quality films than what is presented in the mainstream by people like Oprah Winfrey and Steven Spielberg, Lee Daniels and Tyler Perry, who want to keep us in a narrative of black people being miserable and downtrodden, when in actuality what we want to see are a richer, diverse picture of black people being uplifted and empowered in our media. And that makes me, as the publisher of SJS Direct, very happy because it shows me that there is an audience that's becoming more aware and looking for better material, and we just have to see a way to get that material to brothers and sisters, because The Color Purple's plummet after that so-called record-breaking premiere, but I can remember a couple of 90s movies that opened on Christmas Day that did, I believe, better than this. So when I look at this whole narrative they tried to spin to make this movie into a hit, it clearly shows me that it completely failed, because this movie is a flop, and it's a flop at the box office that shows me that black people are starting to become more aware as related to our image and starting to say, hey, I want better stories than stories set during slave time. I'm tired of the Jim Crow stories and the civil rights stories, and we want more different kinds of stories, because if you want to get into the black of profitability with black audiences, Hollywood's going to have to do better than giving us a remake of a Color Purple movie that was played out as far back as 2010, when social media basically changed the discourse, and as it changed the discourse, it changed people's perception of self and showed us we want an image of black that empowers black people. Now, if you want to pick up some of my positive black fiction on the SJS Direct imprint, like the ISIS series, the Esteem series, the John Haynes series, the books of the Spinsterella trilogy, my black sorority novel, The Thetas, and my vampire novel, Eternal Night, you can find all of that black fiction on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find it at other online booksellers like Smashwords, the iBookstore, Google Play, and Barnes & Noble. And if you'd like to see me be able to make more videos about black media and also be able to pay for the covers for more SJS Direct books, which feature positive images of black people, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, The Temptation of John Haynes. Give in to temptation and pick up this action-packed African-American paranormal romance. Get The Temptation of John Haynes in paperback and e-readers today. Now available in paperback and e-readers, ISIS, All About the Goddess. The Goddess Next Door bears all in the art studio to catch a campus stalker in this action-packed ISIS series mystery. Get your copy of ISIS, All About the Goddess in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Support black-owned and black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.